There's many things that the Acolyte is not telling you that are extremely suspicious about Master Vernestra. There are so many clues that actually I don't know where to start, but I'm going to begin with the scar of Chimere that he has on his back. We see it twice in episode 6, and it resembles that of Vernestra's lightsaber whip, or light whip for short. Now, Vernestra herself, when she goes to the site of the tragedy where all the Jedi were killed, she seems extremely distressed and she wants everything handled quietly. When Chimere is asked about who discarded him, he seems to be in secret. He just smirks and doesn't talk about it. But if you thought that was it, then you're sadly mistaken, because what color is Vernestra's whip? That's right, it is purple, similar to Mace Windu's. If you remember, the reason why Mace Windu had a purple lightsaber was because of his Vapad technique, which required, that's right, a hint, a glint of dark side that Mace Windu was able to control. Only by harnessing a bit of the dark side could he actually use the technique called Vapad that Mace Windu frequently used, and in fact, other Jedi Masters that tried Vapad fell to the dark side themselves. So not only is Vernestra acting suspicious, not only is her lightsaber whip color very suspicious also, but that scar on Chimere's back, if indeed it is proven that it is from a light whip, then we definitely have some sort of a weird Sith connection here. But of course, we're not just gonna end it there, because what the Acolyte isn't telling you is the real origins of the light whip, the real origins behind what the show creators were thinking when they created the weapon of Vernestra, and that is Darth Lumia. It all begins with the death of Luke Skywalker's wife, Mara Jade. This is one of the tragic stories that you can find in the Legacy of the Force comic series, Legacy of the Force novels, a series that was released years ago in the 2000s. The main antagonist in question, of course, is Darth Lumia, which comes after the original trilogy. She was in fact named Lady of the Sith. So to fully explain how Luke completely lost his mind after dueling Lumia, we have to talk about all of the duels, because it's a leading up thing that goes up a level each time they duel, and in the end it all implodes for Luke. The first one of these skirmishes was on Kinoween. Luke dueled Lumia during a rebel mission to rescue Donnie and recover information regarding the Nagai War. Now, Luke discovered that the Lady of the Sith was in fact an Imperial agent, a remnant named Shira Brie, who had infiltrated in fact the Rebel Alliance at the time. Luke shot her down during a rebel mission that he was on to destroy an Imperial superweapon. As you can see, this develops as Luke and Leia are trying to get rid of the Imperial remnants. Just to note, this is all of course in Legends material, not the new ones that Dave Filoni is heading. It is in fact after this duel that things start to take a very dark turn. So this is 40 years after the Battle of Yavin. This is on the Roko Depot. Lumia and her Dark Jedi, Elamar Rar, fought the Grand Master at the time, Luke Skywalker, and his wife, Mara Jade. This was during the Second Galactic Civil War. During this duel, in fact, what's interesting is that Lumia was severely wounded but faked her own death. It wasn't until the Battle of Gilater 8 that Lumia and Alima would fight against Luke again and his sister, Leia Organa Solo, in the midst of the battle between the Galactic Alliance and the Confederation. Now, after this battle is when things start to heat up, as I said, because Lumia takes Jacen Solo as her apprentice. This is the son of Han and Leia. This is what Ben Solo was based on in canon. Jacen Solo was in fact the nephew of Luke, who turned to the dark side. Lumia had been corrupting Jacen for some time, and to prove that the dark side resides within him, Jacen Solo was the one who killed Mara Jade secretly. Nobody really knew about it until they found out much later. Learning about his wife's death sent Luke into a pit of despair. This was not the Jedi Order times. This was the new Jedi Order times, which meant that attachments were being formed, unfortunately, and you can imagine how Luke felt with Mara Jade's death. Here is a picture of her funeral, with Luke and his son Ben Skywalker dressed in robes with hoods pulled over their head. Even Jason Solo shows up to this funeral, and there's tension. It's a pretty good read, but what's interesting is that Luke does not know that Jason Solo in fact killed Mara Jade. He believes that it was Lumia who killed his wife. Comes the duel of Terraphon. First of all, they had a dogfight over Terraphon, with Luke Skywalker showing that he was a much superior pilot to Lumia, which forced her down to the surface. Once down there, Luke leapt from his vessel clutching his lightsaber, and Lumia did the same. However, her signature weapon was the light whip. Once the battle started between them, a furious battle at that, it very soon became apparent that the duel was going in Luke's favor. Was this because Luke took this personally with the death of his wife? It could very well be. And you have, again, instances where Luke in Legends is kind of using the dark side, toying with it. Although the Dark Lady fought as best as she could, there were essentially nothing that could deter Luke from getting what he wanted, and it seemed that he was after revenge at this point. This was mano a mano. Simply put, Lumia could not use anything in her favor. There were no objects to throw with the Force, there wasn't anything else, and so atop a cliff, Luke ducked inside her defenses and their weapons clashed. Now, Luke was tactfully pushing Lumia to the edge of the cliff and continually beating her guard down. With each step back she took, the ground began to crumble. The duel was so big that Lumia ultimately slipped, her light whip tumbling off to the ground below, and as Lumia fell, this was the time for revenge. Luke did not let her fall to her death. In fact, he grabbed her by the wrist, raised her back onto the ground before him, and with a long arc of his lightsaber, he brought the blade around her head and decapitated her completely. You can see now what I mean, because Luke is kind of toying with the dark side here. One of the last Jedi we remember to decapitate someone in cold blood like this was in fact his own dad, Anakin Skywalker. This is giving me a lot of Anakin decapitating Dooku vibes. But of course, the bad news does not stop here, because later, after this battle, after the death of Lumia, Ben finally learned and revealed that it could not have been Lumia who murdered his mother, who murdered Luke's wife. And from the Legacy of the Force novels, we learned that after Luke found out this was the truth, that Lumia was not the killer, he went into complete despair, into a depression that he was never in before. He was unable to live with the fact that he had killed the wrong person, even though she was a Sith. What's weird is that afterward, he still didn't know that it was Jason. He first suspected the Dark Jedi Alima, but it would be some time before Luke actually learned the truth, that it was Jason Solo, the new Dark Lord, who was the true killer, Darth Caedus. And yeah, this was one of the rare instances where you are actually gonna read as to the extent of Luke's despair after his wife's death. Tell me what you think down below in the comments.